Welcome to the EmpowerHer Wellness podcast. I'm Morgan, and I'm thrilled to be your host and wellness coach as we navigate the path to a healthier, more confident you. As the owner of Get Fit With Me, I bring years of experience in personal training, nutrition, and coaching to each episode. Join me as we explore practical tips and strategies for fitness, nutrition, mindset, and more, all tailored for busy women just like you. Let's empower your wellness journey and achieve lasting transformation together. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to an episode of the EmpowerHer Wellness podcast. I'm your host and coach, Morgan Ekovich. And today we are joined by a lactation specialist, which is perfect because this is National Breastfeeding Month. And I honestly didn't know this was we had a specific month for this until I met Natosha and we were talking. And I think this is phenomenal. So today's episode is specifically for those of you who are looking to become a mom and know that breastfeeding may be in your future. You are pregnant and you are waiting for that time. Or maybe you just had a baby and you're like in the transition and you're struggling, or you just have a ton of questions. So I know some of you may be thinking, well, I'm past that stage in my life, or I'm so far away from that, like this episode doesn't pertain. Before you jump out, because I know we have some really specific episodes, I want you to open up your phone and send this to all of your soon-to-be mom friends or your current mom friends, because we all have them. And share this episode with them because it's going to be super impactful. We're going to learn some tangible things because breastfeeding's hard. It's a whole nother job in itself. So if you know anybody, please open up and share. So today, as we dive in, we have Natosha Sage-EL Bylsma with us today. Welcome. How are you today?
Good. How are you?
I am great. I'm super excited to have you for National Breastfeeding Month. And I would love for you to kind of share a little bit about how you got into this, how you got into lactation to be a lactation specialist, and kind of where you are now in that journey.
Yeah, so before I had kids, I wasn't really gung-ho about breastfeeding. It's kind of funny. I just was like, oh, like breastfeeding's a thing that people do. And so when I got pregnant, I was still kind of just like, oh yeah, I'll breastfeed because like people kept asking, and like my doula was like, you should breastfeed. And so I was just like, okay, I'll breastfeed. And then I had my baby and it was a very traumatic experience. And I was just like, I have to breastfeed. I have to breastfeed. And that was like all I could think about was breastfeeding. And so I was 3 months postpartum and I got pregnant again. And people were like, hey, like you can breastfeed while pregnant. And I'm like, sure can. And it was just like, then suddenly people like felt like I was an expert because I had two babies close together. And so when my second was 6 months old, I decided to really get into breastfeeding. And so I became a certified lactation counselor at that point and started working for WIC as a breastfeeding peer counselor. So I was there for almost 5 years. And during that time, I started working towards my IBCLC. And I also started working for Next Generation Lactation Service. And through my work there, it just kind of blossomed into now we're going to do a nonprofit, and Next Generation Family Services was born in 2022. And so now I work there here as an executive director in IBCLC and child passenger safety technician. I'm currently the sole employee, but we are in the process of hiring a part-time admin assistant. So I'm really excited about that and to have somebody else help. But my board is a true working board and I have an amazing board. They're the best. So yeah, so that's kind of how I got started doing my work.
That's That's awesome. I didn't realize that your second baby was so close. I know we kind of talked about on the back end, but like I didn't realize it was that close.
Oh yeah, it hits different when you say like, oh, they're 10 and 9, and then my youngest being 21 months. But when you say, yeah, I got pregnant at 3 months postpartum, then it's like, oh, they're close.
So, really, kind of how I'm seeing you is anything from like baby coming out and needing food from their mother. So, lactation, breastfeeding, all the way to when you mentioned the passenger safety and like making sure the kids are safe in the car. Like, you are just kind of a one stop shop for moms who are new to like, I don't know what to do with this little child.
Yeah.
Um, so what do you mentioned the IBCLC? What is that? And what does it stand for? And how does that fall into? Because it's kind of just a bunch of letters if we don't know what it is.
Yeah, for sure. So it's an international board certified lactation consultant. So basically, it is a special credential that you can get. It takes a lot of work to get there, but you can make it happen if you really want to. And so with that, then since I'm an international board certified, I can practice anywhere in the world. So if I wanted to up and move to Europe tomorrow, I could do that and still practice. And so I can also meet with people all over the world. So I had a client who was living in Michigan, but she was like in Argentina visiting family, and we did a virtual. So it just allows me a little bit more openness and flexibility with, helping my sister who doesn't live in Michigan, things like that. So it allows you to continue to help families regardless of where they're located for like insurance purposes and things like that too.
That's awesome. And so you said back in 2022. So this has been post COVID. So was the online helping people virtually, was that a thing or is that something that it's more evolved into? Because I know before there was only so much we were doing online. So has it always been in the lactation world as helping new moms virtually, or is that more of a newer thing for you guys?
I definitely think it's always been kind of a part of it. It was always kind of like a gray area for coverage and things like that, but I definitely think that it was something that we always had the option of doing. Obviously, you have to make sure that like your stuff is like HIPAA compliant and all of those pieces. I think COVID made it easier and made it to be where there were more options. And with COVID too, I think we had a lot more education and training around doing virtual appointments and what that looks like. So I think it really helped in that aspect of it, just making a virtual appointment a little bit more effective than what people typically kind of think. Like a lot of times people are like, can you really help me with breastfeeding when you're not physically here? And like, yes, definitely. I prefer in person if possible, just because I'm pretty type A. So I like to be able to do the things, and you need extra people. So like, usually
Mm.
when we're doing a virtual, like you need a support person who's able to like move the camera so I can see how the baby's latching and like all of those aspects. But it's definitely still possible. It just is it's just different. And so, yeah, so I definitely think COVID kind of opened the doors wide open for doing things virtually.
Awesome. So I think that's really cool because you're right. You can help people from all over. So let's kind of talk about some of these struggles because I do think that common question every mom gets is, are you going to breastfeed? And I think the common answer I get, at least from my girlfriends, are, I'm going to try, but not everybody's
Yep.
successful. So, like, what are some of the most common struggles? And I know there's struggles that the dad feels, but like, what are the most, let's start with the mom. What are some of the struggles that the moms feel through all of this, aside from the hormonal change and all of that happening? Like, what are things that they tend to deal with or that they should know coming up before they have this baby of it's normal to have these struggles?
Yeah. So a lot of my families really struggle with like shallow latch, sore nipples, low milk supply. And I always say that too can be like perceived low milk supply, or it could be actual low milk supply. Obviously, when I'm typically seeing people, I'm not seeing them in the best time of their life. Like it's the best time in the fact that they just had a baby, but they're exhausted, they're hormonal, and usually breastfeeding is not going well. So a lot of times people will be like, oh, you just don't really get a whole lot of rewarding things. But I do get rewarding things because I randomly will get messages like I did today from a client who's, I just made it to a year and I wouldn't have been able to do it without you.
That's
Um,
so awesome.
yes. But yeah, so I mean, I think a lot of people think that it's normal to have pain with breastfeeding. And I think that that's something that we're trying our hardest as lactation professionals to dispel, because breastfeeding is not supposed to hurt. Pumping is not supposed to hurt. Your nipples just have to toughen up in the meantime to get it to not hurt anymore. I was just listening to a webinar, and this woman was interviewing her grandmother who breastfed obviously many, many years ago. And she was like, yeah, with my first, I didn't really prepare for breastfeeding, but with my second, I knew what to do. And I toughened up my nipples with a washcloth. And I like kind of forgot that that was like a thing that they used to recommend, is that you would toughen up your nipples during pregnancy with a washcloth. And she was like, but I never had any breastfeeding issues after that. And I was like, I mean, maybe it worked for her, but it's very aggressive. And
Sounds very aggressive. And yeah, but like different day and age, different
yes,
tools, different skills, things we didn't know, like we didn't, like we know now.
yes. So you don't need to toughen up your nipples. Your nipples are tough just enough already. And yeah, and breastfeeding is just not supposed to hurt. So sometimes it can be a simple tweak. Sometimes it can be a lot more that's going on that, baby needs support with and you need support with. And then, yes, low milk supply. And occasionally, like I'll have clients with actual true low milk supply, but a lot of low milk supply is really perceived low milk supply. It is just something about being born a female. And I don't know if it's just like for years society has told you you're not enough and you're not doing this correctly and you can't do this and you can't do that. And I don't know if it's that and it's just in us that like breastfeeding can't possibly just go well.
Mm.
Even like I just had a client yesterday and she was like, yeah, like I don't think he's getting enough. And I'm like, you're flooding him with milk. Like you have more than enough milk. And so she was like, oh, I didn't realize that these were all signs of getting too much milk. And I was like, yes. Yes, these are all signs of
Oh.
getting too much milk. And so a lot of times too, it is just kind of those reminders of, okay, I can do this and this is going well. And, I can feed my baby at the breast and it can be okay.
And then, so that's more specifically to the moms because we're the only ones with the boobs. So when we're actually doing that, but like, what are some of the other struggles? The ones that come to mind are the full-time job that a mom takes on by deciding to breastfeed. And then your counterpart, whether it's male or female, decide is trying to help, but they can only help so much because they don't have the tools. So like how do you help parents navigate that? Because I imagine that's also a pretty stressful part. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but stress is not great for helping create milk supply. So if you're super stressed and you're not eating enough and all of that, your milk supply that will show there. Is that correct? Or is that just a myth
Yeah.
that I've heard?
Yeah, stress can definitely hinder milk supply, so it can be not good to have a lot of stress in your life. But yeah, it is hard. It is hard being the full-time everything, as it happens to be when you are a birthing parent. You almost organically become the full-time everything when you are breastfeeding. But I always just encourage my families that it does get easier. The first 6 weeks, especially, are just so hard because you're so tired and your baby is changing and growing so much in those first 6 weeks. And the baby is still figuring it out. Like they don't realize that they're not part of the birthing parent anymore. And so, the baby is still in that process too. For partners, it can be really hard for them because they feel like, well, if I just give the baby a bottle, then you could have a break. And then for me, like in my relationship, I was like, well, if you give the baby a bottle, then I have to pump. And like that doesn't give me a break. That's worse. And so I always just try and remind partners that sometimes what they feel like they're saying to be supportive is negative, in the fact that
Mm.
like our hormonal brains hear, oh, you think that I can't do this, so we should give a bottle because I'm not doing this well or I'm doing something wrong. And so I always just tell partners like, we know that's not what you really mean, but our hormonal brain, this is what we hear. And so just being encouraging and doing other things. I have one of my best friends, her and her husband, he's lucky to be off for a few months after they have a baby. And so he's on output and she's on input. And so she's like, I don't even change a diaper while he's off until he goes back to work. And so there are other things that you can do to care for a baby that's not feeding, but then just caring for the birthing parent and making sure that they have food and snacks and that they have help if they need. A lot of times, like, partners are the one who are scheduling appointments and like getting stuff together. Like randomly, I'll have like a male name come up and I'm like, I mean, it could be, but usually it's just the partner, and in their like sleep deprivation, they didn't put the birthing parent's information, they put their information. So that's always hilarious too. But I also love that when I reach out and they're like, yeah, I'm the dad, or like the dad calls and he's like, we really need this appointment. I need to get this scheduled for my wife. And so even that is supportive and helpful. And, being part of the appointment and listening to what is being said, it is always good to just help them and to help remember. She's going to remember some stuff. He's going to remember some stuff. Everybody kind of remembers different pieces and kind of doing the plan. Sometimes I have support partners who come and they have a notepad and everything and they're taking notes. So whatever it is that your partner needs to feel supported outside of the feeding process.
So you mentioned that you had a doula, and I know a few people who have had doulas or a midwife. I don't know the exact difference, but I know they've helped them with that birthing process. And coming up with a plan is important so that in the moment, you, as the hormonal woman going through all of this, you've thought it through. Is this plan of he's going to do output, I'm going to do input, are these conversations that they should have prior to baby being here? Even if for some reason breastfeeding doesn't work, is it still good to plan and have those conversations prior, just when our mind is not exhausted and overwhelmed and changing every 0.5 seconds?
Yeah, definitely. Because it does. It just kind of, it's such a whir of a time period. And suddenly you're like, oh, I have this baby and I have to care for this baby. So I don't even remember if my husband and I really talked about what to expect with my youngest being his first. So I think it was just huge. Like, I'm just along for the ride. Like, you've done this before. And so you just tell me where to go and what to do and where to be and how to do it, and I'll do it. But I definitely think that probably having some more of those conversations beforehand of like what's that's going to look like. But I think it's hard when it's your first because you don't know what to expect and you don't quite understand like how tired you're going to be, right? Everybody's just, oh, you're going to be so tired, or oh, like breastfeeding is really hard, or whatever. And it's like some things you just don't realize until you're doing it. Wow, this is intense. Plus, you have all of the hormone shifting on top of that, too.
So that kind of plays into education, healthcare providers, you, new family members, possible, however it looks. So, like, for you, is your typical interaction after baby is here, or do you help educate healthcare providers and do you go help educate families beforehand so they have a better idea? They're never going to fully know until they're in it. But how does that role kind of play into it from your perspective and with your nonprofit and what you do?
Yeah, definitely. So I do offer prenatal education currently with a grant that we have. Our breastfeeding class is free and people get a bunch of free stuff for coming to the class. So definitely prenatal education can be just really helpful. A lot of the information you're not going to remember, but it's good to just kind of get your toes wet and figure out like, okay, this is what that can look like. This is what this should look like. And then I also think that it is helpful for people too when they already kind of have identified an IBCLC before, because you're inviting this person to be part of a really vulnerable time in your life. And so, in some cases, like maybe you're coming to the office, but in a lot of cases, like we're doing home visits. And so you're also inviting that person into your home with your new baby. So it is just a really special time. And then definitely education with providers. So currently, because of a grant, I've also been able to do like lunch and learns with different providers in the area. So just kind of not necessarily fully educating them. Some providers do ask like very particular breastfeeding questions, probably things that kind of come up a lot in their work when they're working with new families, but also just letting them know, hey, we're here as a resource, so you don't have to have all of the answers. I know it can be frustrating when people are at the hospital or at their doctor's office and they're like, the doctor doesn't know these things, or they didn't really help with these things, but you're there for such a short period of time. And also, doctors are designed not really to help with breastfeeding. Like they do 8 hours of breastfeeding training, maybe a little bit more depending on what kind of doctor they are. And so they're not designed to know about breastfeeding, but they do have a purpose and they have a lot of other things that they need to do and remember and check on. And so breastfeeding maybe just isn't the place for them fully. And that might be okay. I'm still like figuring that out myself of, is this just like as good as it gets? And there's not really anything that's better. But as an IBCLC, like I'm taking the time. So even yesterday with my client who thought she was underfeeding her baby and was overfeeding, I was there for almost 2 hours at her house with her. And so usually I'm there for at least an hour. If I don't have to rush off, then I stay longer if needed. And so, I'm really spending the time. And as an IBCLC, that's kind of how our work is designed, is to spend the time with you and to kind of see, maybe baby's not hungry when I first arrive, so we have to wait 20-25 minutes before baby's ready to eat. Maybe you also have questions about pumping or, things like that. And so I'm really just like taking that time. Whereas in what are you really going to get out of a hospital experience where you're there for maybe 2 days, maybe a little bit longer, or also at a doctor's appointment that is like a 15-minute time slot. Like you're not going to really get much from that.
Yeah, like absolutely. And that's why a lot of clients come to me is their doctor tells them they need to lose weight, but they spend such a short amount of time in nutrition and exercise that it's eat less, move more is like the advice they get. And they're like, I've been struggling for years and it's not working. So I'm in the same boat you are, is they get frustrated because they don't get the answer, but the doctor is not always the spot for that. And I think having people hear that and understand that is we have a doctor for a reason, but they also don't specialize. They don't specialize in those things. So having access to people who do specialize is really important. Okay, so I have a few questions. First one is, what are things that parents should be putting on that baby shower list that will help them with breastfeeding or the transition? Like, what are like one or two different tools or items that you're like, yes, nipple cream, or like, no, coconut oil works just fine? Are there certain things out there? Because I feel like on a baby registry, we really don't know unless we ask a friend. We've been a mom before, or we've asked somebody like you that's like, what do I really need to put on? Do I need 17 different types of bottles? Or can I like start with one and like try the other ones down the road later?
Yes, definitely. You can usually start with one bottle. You don't need a whole bunch. Although some people will do like they now have a box of different bottles that you can buy and things like that's totally fine if somebody really wants to do that. The even flow balance bottles are IBCLC's favorite bottles. Sometimes they can be really hard to find because it seems to be that probably IBCLCs are recommending them, so they're getting bought up. But yeah, coconut oil is just fine. You don't need nipple cream. Nipple cream doesn't actually heal anything, so coconut oil is going to be better. Or in worst cases, if you're having that much damage, seeing an IBCLC and will get you squared away. A lot of my clients really like a breastfeeding pillow. Some IBCLCs kind of feel indifferent about pillows and things. They think that you should be able to just do it without all the extra things, but a pillow can be helpful. A lot of my clients like the My Breast Friend pillow. It just is a little bit more firmer, not so pillowy, the boppy. And then it's also kind of a hot topic in IBCLC world, passive milk collectors. Some IBCLCs are like, no, don't use them. A lot of my clients have really good luck with using them. And so I typically recommend the Boon Trove because it fits right into your bra. It's really easy peasy. It's just a little bit easier to use than the Haka. So yeah, and then obviously just making sure you have a good breast pump because you don't know if you're going to be pumping a lot in the beginning or not. So having a good breast pump, ideally one that plugs into the wall. I know wireless is all the rage, but usually you get more milk when you use a pump that's plugged into the wall versus a pump that's wireless. So in the beginning, at least you want something that's going to be good versus like something that's going to be mediocre.
And that makes sense. And for most people, you probably want your stronger one. You're going to be at home more, so you don't need that portability. But down the road, once kind of you've built up your supply, I don't know if I'm using this terminology correctly. So if I'm not,
Are.
please correct me. But like once you've built up your supply, I feel like then a portable one makes more sense because you are on the go more and your
Yeah.
body knows what to do.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
definitely. It's kind of like the portable is good for if you're going back to work and you're a teacher or a nurse and you really have to be still moving while working. Portable is like good for just once in a while scenarios. You just don't want it to be your everyday, all day scenario.
Got it. And I'm going to make sure I get all those links to those things or a list so I can put those in our show notes because I know some people are probably like, I'm listening to this and like I want those ideas. I will make sure to put the timestamp in the show notes as well as a list of the things she mentioned so that you guys can actually find them because I think that's the other thing is when we find a piece of equipment or a tool or anything, like we want good access to it rather than let me Google search and hope this is the right thing.
Yes.
So, we've talked about some of the struggles, we've talked about some of the tools, we've talked about how you help parents and moms. What are some things that you do to help create that positive experience? Because there is a lot of stress, there is a lot of struggles. So, like, what do you do, or what can parents do around this pumping, around this breastfeeding time to create a positive experience for themselves when they are running on E, exhausted, but they want it to be as good of an experience as they can make it?
Yeah, for sure. So, especially when I have people coming into my office, I try and just have it kind of be like a calming space. I normally have like acoustics in the background. I normally don't even have the overhead lights on because that can just be so jarring. So, I normally will just have like a lamp on. And so, I think just like creating like a very calming vibe and going with that is really helpful. So many times, even partners are like, wow, I feel like I'm in a therapist's office. And I'm like, you kind of are in a therapist's office. We're going to be talking a lot today and working through like, what kind of birth experience you had and how was your birth experience and how have things with breastfeeding been going. And I'm going to listen to all of the not so fun, gory details that you have to share. And so a lot of my work that I do is counseling. And so it is just kind of listening and being, oh, I've had that experience, or I have another client who's had that experience. So it's also helpful to know that they're not alone and this craziness that they just went through, and then just empowering them and showing them, see, you can do this too. I try and be as hands off as I can be when it comes to helping with latch and things like that. Typically, like, I'm letting them latch and just seeing, and wow, your baby opened up really wide. They latched really well. And so that they can see, oh, I am doing these things correctly. I do know how to do these things. And then even when I'm like, oh, let's try this, and maybe I just twist the baby closer to the parent or something like that. And so it's just, let's just try this and see if this helps. Not like, oh, you're doing this all wrong. So I think that that really helps too, so that they can kind of see and recreate that when they get home or when I leave, because obviously, like, I'm not going to be there 24/7 to help, even though many parents will be like, can you just live here and be here all the time? And I'm like, as tempting as that is, no, I cannot. Going home to my three crazy boys actually sounds worse than living here, but they need their mom.
And I think that's awesome that you help them feel confident and empowered in something that is so unknown and new, even if it is like a second or third time mom. Yeah, this may be your second, third, fourth, eighth child. I know somebody who has 9 kids, and like, but each experience is different.
Mhm.
Also, your body changes from each kid to each kid. And like, each woman has a different nipple. The babies are different. There's so many different factors that, yes, there's similarities, which are great. So you have a starting point, but there's so many little small tweaks and little tips and things that in your mind, because you've seen so many, that like you can help them with by like, you're not doing it wrong. There's no wrong way to do it unless you hold the baby upside down and try to have them latch from their butt. I think that's the only way you could probably try to do breastfeeding wrong here. But there's like, let's just tweak a little bit. And there's small tweaks. And I love that you were helping them feel that way.
Yeah, for sure.
So, as we kind of wrap up here, I want to hear what are like, so this podcast is all about one, education, but also so that women can walk away with like, I have this one tangible task that I can take on, that I feel like the one thing I learned from today was this, or the one thing that I can go and implement with my child when they're here or right now, because I am breastfeeding. What would be that one thing that they should test out, search for, do?
I would say find an IBCLC if you need help. We're here to help, and we're here to help for the whole journey. So obviously a lot of my client load is obviously new babies, because that is a hard time. But occasionally, like, clients will message me and have questions about solid foods or question about weaning. Things obviously change when you're nursing a toddler and it just looks a little bit different. And so sometimes I'll have clients who aren't concerned about that. But even as a fully formula feeding family, I only help fully formula feeding families. I'll get referrals for families who are having bottle feeding difficulties. And I mean, a bottle is a bottle. It doesn't matter what's in the bottle. If a baby's having a hard time feeding from the bottle, it doesn't matter if it's breast milk or formula. And so anytime that you're having feeding difficulties, reaching out to an IBCLC is just really helpful. And, so if you have friends, connecting them with one, because sometimes that just kind of makes it a little bit easier when you're like, oh, my best friend used this person or my cousin used this person. And a lot of my referrals are word of mouth. So many times they're like, oh, you saw my sister. Oh, you saw my friend, or like, I ran into this mom at the grocery store. She gave me your card. And so
She saw I was struggling and she just handed your card over. She's like, yep,
yeah.
you need her.
I have one of my best friends literally will just hand out my card to anyone who's pregnant, which is great and
Uh,
hilarious
that's
at the same
awesome.
time. And my husband's like, you should do that. And I'm like, that feels icky, me being like the self-promoter. Like, that feels gross, but it's totally fine if my friend does it.
So I want you to share how people can work with you. And then also, while you're sharing that, is your services free? Are they low cost? Are they covered by insurance? Because I know you've got a few different avenues, I think, in which you help people. So are you like all the above depending on where you are? So yeah, share that portion as well as you share how people can work with you and learn more about you.
Yeah, so our website is nextgenfamilyservices.org, or you can email me at Natosha at nextgenfamilyservices.org. And we do bill some insurances. Unfortunately, I'm not able to bill Medicaid, but that is one of the biggest reasons why I have the scholarship fund. So people can donate to the scholarship fund too, but typically we have grant funds that cover the scholarship fund as well. So that is all there to be used by anyone who has WIC, EBT services, or Medicaid, anyone who is a person of color or just is in financial need of needing assistance. And sometimes that's like they pay for 2 appointments and then they're like, I really need a third appointment, but I can't afford it. Then that's where that fund comes into play. So we do have out-of-pocket rates too as well for families who are able to pay out of pocket if I'm not able to bill their insurance. But majority of my clients are their insurance covered or they are scholarship. I would say I have very few that pay out of pocket. And then car seat checks are free as well. So that is just a service that we provide. And yeah, I think that covers everything that you asked about.
Yeah, car seat checks. Let's circle back to that. Do they come to you or do you come to them? Or combo of both depending on the situation?
Typically, they come to me just because it
Okay.
makes it a little bit easier for me to like squeeze them in between appointments. So it just makes it a little bit easier. But like obviously, if I'm already there for a lactation appointment and they're like, "Hey, can you check out my car seat?" I just do it. So that is also fine.
That's awesome. I love all of those services and that you have a multitude of ways because you work with such a variety of women and families and incomes that like you're not just limited to helping somebody who is able to get help. You are able to help anyone who wants to get help, which I think is amazing.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure. And that reminds me too, Capital Area
yeah.
Baby Cafe. So that is a
Yes.
free breastfeeding support group that I facilitate too. And we currently meet every Wednesday from 10 to 12 at Bethlehem Lutheran Church. And then second and fourth Thursdays from 5:30 to 7. And we serve dinner. And that is a free group too. So people can also get IBCLC help there as well.
Wow. You are so busy. Like you are so busy. And I
I
love
used to
that. And
be
I
busier. So it's actually really nice.
I love all the avenues. And can they find information about the baby cafe on your website? Is all of that
Yes.
on? Okay, awesome.
Yep.
Because I know that's also the other thing is depending on people tune into this episode, it may be a couple years down the line and your days and time might have changed, which I always like to remember of if you're listening, check the date of this episode to make sure that like you pick up relevant information. I've listened to episodes and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to use this coupon code that somebody said you can get 20% off. And I'm like, yeah, that episode was 3 years old. No wonder I can't use that coupon code. So if you've been around, you've been listening, or you're just now checking us out, make sure to check the date. Everything is still relevant. If it's not, I will make sure we do updated episodes. But like, just if you want to join that support group, make sure you check their website to get accurate information.
Yes. And who knows, sometimes things change. I almost started to say the wrong Thursday days because we recently had to change because of the church had a conflict. So yeah, it's still new to me too. And some of my people, they'll be like, "Is it evening baby cafe?" And I'm like, "No, it's not. No."
Well, awesome. Thank you so much, Natasha, for joining us today. Do you have anything else that you want to add kind of last minute before we jump off?
I don't think so. Thank you for having me. It was fun.
Yes. And for those of you who stuck around, this was her first podcast. And I am so happy that she said yes. And I'm going to be doing a post here sometime this fall to kind of promote all of the awesome women that we've had on here that were one, local, and two, we've had a ton of newbies and you guys don't always know who they are. So I'm going to be doing a shout out because taking part in sharing information and sharing education in a different way is so important. And I always want to bring relevant information that you can actually learn from and you can take something away rather than feeling like you just have more swarming in your brain. So thank you so much again for joining us. And for those of you who are still here, remember, share this episode with a mom in your life or a soon-to-be mom so that they can learn these tips and tools and add some fun things to their baby shower list. So until next time, I'll see you next Thursday. Thank you for tuning in to the EmpowerHer Wellness podcast. I hope you found today's episode inspiring and packed with actionable tips. Remember, your journey to becoming the strongest, most confident version of yourself is just beginning. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode and join our community of empowered women. Until next time, stay strong and stay confident.